Hello, families. Welcome back to this edition of Getting Ready to Go Back to School. And 2020 is a very different year and time. And the topic we're going to be talking about today, my friend Rebecca Lopez is here with us, and I'm going to have her introduce herself in a moment. But we're talking today about how to create a winning team. What does that look like? Well, you get to be a parent, sole caregiver, educator, food preparer, laundry doer, all of the errand things this season. And that sounds like a lot. And when things happened to us in the spring, it was a lot. But Rebecca and friends are here today to share with us some tips and tricks on how we can actually enter this season feeling more prepared and like we are in the driver's seat. So Rebecca, will you share with us who you are, credentials wise, but also about being a mama and wife?
Yes, well, thanks again for having me. My name is Rebecca Lopez, and I have my master's in education, and I've had kind of my foot in all of the areas of education over the last 12 plus years. I have been in brick and mortar, doing private school and public school, and with all ages from preschool to 12th grade, and I've taught various subjects. I'm also very familiar with the digital learning platform as well, working with several different online programs and independent studies programs and homeschools as well. So I've done a lot of things as a teacher, as an administrator, and as a parent too. I have 3 kiddos in elementary school, and they're doing the public school route right now from home. And my husband's also a teacher, and he's navigating all those fun new adventures on that side as well. So we are excited to help you, hopefully a little bit, and we are still learning on this adventure with you guys too.
I love it so much. And then can you share a little bit about like kind of, both our hearts about this topic specifically when we're talking about what we are going to be, what you're going to be sharing about with us today when we're talking about preparing and creating a winning team.
Yes, winning teams, and that's the goal here, and having a happy heart while we're doing that as well. So we are, as parents, not only going to be doing parents or as guardians, helping out our kiddos through the learning as well, we're also doing our own normal things, plus some more things with working at home probably as well. But we're also going to have to team up with teachers and help our kiddos actually do the things that they're supposed to be doing. We are the boots to the ground, really, essentially, during this, and trying to help our students get the things done and us also have a happy family at the same time. So we're going to take a deeper look into our personalities and their personalities and maybe how we might be anticipating some struggles and give us some actual tangible tools to navigate through those things. So when we're in that moment, we might have something to keep the peace and the happiness and love a little better. And I'm excited to bring along an extra friend here who's a pro at all these things to help us out today.
Oh my goodness, me too. Well, I don't want to wait any longer because the content today is so good. Thank you again for being with us today. I am going to let you take over the screen. So your turn.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're hopping into this chat with Dr. Lauren Franks today. So we are so excited to have her and her expertise to help continue our series on just preparing for digital learning at home. So today we're going to be focusing on preparing a winning team. So let me introduce Dr. Lauren Franks. You want to talk a little bit about yourself today?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Rebecca. I am a clinical psychologist, and I specialize in working with children and adolescents. So I'm here just to chime in a little bit on the mental health side of things, or more on just the how do we as parents keep ourselves regulated, and how do we pay attention and stay attuned to our kids' mental health needs while trying to tackle and be successful in their education this year.
Yes, and that's a very loaded topic, right? And I'm sure you'll be seeing lots of clients dealing with some of these things in the future as well as your normal load. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to give us some snippets of advice and maybe some tools we can use as we go into this new school year and beyond. So one thing, I am a teacher, right? I have been in the brick and mortar side and the educator side in digital learning for a while, and you have the psychological, emotional support. So I thought it'd be great for us to team together through this topic of preparing a winning team. And that's going to be the team that is like the teacher, the parent, and then the student. Of course, we need our star player, the student, as we go in. So I know from my point of view as a teacher in digital learning that sometimes we are behind a lot of people, and that can be different platforms are going to look differently. So as a parent side, keep that in mind. Is your teacher just looking at your group of smaller students, like 25 to 30 students? Or is your teacher working with like a third-party platform where they could potentially be working with, over 100 or more students? So just keep that in mind as we're having this conversation, that it will look differently. And I've been on both of those sides as a teacher, so it is hard to kind of manage student-family relationships. So just with a bigger classroom, just give that teacher a little more grace and understanding as well, of course. So our first topic is kind of going over what do they need. So last video we talked about our digital workspace, like the supplies and what the computer is going to look like. But now it's bigger than that, preparing our like emotional needs as well. So Lauren, could you lean in and talk about that, and like how do we create an environment emotionally and physically that's going to prepare us for that?
Yeah. It is so important for us to make sure that we're aware of what are our basic needs, what are the things that are essential for us as individuals, just as human beings, but like in your unique family situation. So in general, there's an understanding that we as humans function with this pyramid of kind of a hierarchy of needs, right? This is not my concept. You can Google it and learn all the things, but there at the bottom there are our basic survival needs. So enough sleep, enough food, and then our physical safety. And then next comes like our emotional side as well, right? Do we feel emotionally safe in the setting? So I would encourage for families, like, always have it in the back of your mind and at the very beginning in the front of your mind, like, are my kids' basic needs being met before I'm expecting them to access other higher levels of functioning, right? So can my kid fully understand what their teacher is telling them if their little tummy is rumbling and all they can focus on is how hungry they are, right? Or, is my kiddo really the best at doing their homework when, it's 10 o'clock at night and they're pretty darn sleepy? So every family is going to be different, but I would say that's a good starting point. Make sure our basic needs are met before we expect our kids or ourselves as parents to access more challenging needs that need to be met.
Right. And I think so. Some of those topics you touched on are great. So it's like your basic needs need to be met. And I know, like in a couple of videos ago, we talked about like scheduling and those immovable things in our time. So you're speaking into like immovable, like just needs, basic human needs that you need. So you talked about like sleep. You talked about being hungry. Are there some other needs that we need to be aware of?
Well, I suppose it depends on your child. So for some kids, that's going to be like, let's make sure that they're physically comfortable, right? Like, are they sitting up tall enough to be able to see the screen? Is the volume loud enough for them to be able to hear what the teacher is saying? Are the headphones that you gave them annoying to their ears and distracting? I guess those kinds of pieces more on like the occupational therapy kind of side would also be important. But yeah, I think just paying attention to their emotional sides too. If it's a rough day, not necessarily does that give them permission not to do their educational work, but it should hopefully shift your perspective as the parent in terms of maybe having more empathy if things don't get done the way they normally do.
Right. The normally do. That's the big like hook, right? What's normal anymore? I don't know. Nobody knows. It's different every day. So yeah, you talked about all those like little things like your headphones. That's so good. I didn't even think about that. Like what we might think is our favorite thing and our favorite chair and way to sit might not be the best for them. However, there are some things that we do know are better, right? And even if they think that they can be rock star students at 2 a.m., if they haven't been sleeping, like we know if those basic needs are not being met, sleep, food, just functions of creating that good environment, we can kind of step in and say like, I know you think this is going to be amazing, but it's not working. Or, maybe give them the opportunity to prove it. And if they prove you wrong, fine, I guess, but you are still the parent having to make those calls, right?
Yeah. And I always encourage parents, like, we like to empower our kids so that they don't feel the urge to push back. But you as the parent are choosing what are the acceptable options, right? So whether that's, hey, for breakfast, you can have a banana or an apple, versus like, you can have whatever you want, and they just pick Lucky Charms every time. So for your schoolwork, maybe it's, hey, you can do your math or your reading, you choose what comes next. Or, you can do your homework before this activity or after this activity, but I'm kind of deciding that it needs to get done today and not tomorrow. So like you said, as the parent, we are still the ones in charge, but if we can empower them within what's acceptable, that's good too.
Yeah, I think that's great. And earlier when we were talking, we were kind of brainstorming some things to discuss. And you mentioned that like it's important to have that routine and structure. And sometimes having that is just good psychologically and emotionally to have expectations, but also to kind of use it as like a crutch or something to blame, right? Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes, thank you for reminding me about that. So I think that, we're asking, okay, we're talking about setting up a winning team, right? And we're asking the parent to be the parent, but at the same time, they have to sometimes put this educator cap on to supplement what the teachers are doing. And that gets challenging because then your relationship with your child is altered. So if we can say, hey, there's a routine, there's a structure, there's a rhythm that the school has set up or that the teacher has set up that we now have to follow, that separates you as the parent from the requirements that are being demanded on your child. So that if your child is frustrated with the setup or the expectations or the rules, it's not all about you and being projected back to you. Like, oh, you're such a mean mom for making me do it this way. Or mom, you don't know what you're talking about. You and your child can now stay attuned and even maybe align with, yeah, this isn't the way we'd like to do it. But it's not them being mad at you for setting up a structure or routine. It's the structure and routine exists outside of your relationship with your kiddo.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And to know that like this is a structure for a reason, and there's probably like academic reasons why they think school should happen these hours, also their work hours. And if we're all doing work hours, then we can have like family time or just relaxed time in the evenings or the weekends. And society's structured that way for a reason sometimes, and that's good. So what happens when those like school expectations or those structures and times are like contradictory to what our family needs are in that hierarchy? Because I could see that's being a struggle, or people are anticipating being in that crunch point, like, oh, like, well, what gives? Like, we can't make this work for everybody in their ways. Like, how do we do that?
Yeah. We're in a season where everyone is being asked to make sacrifices. And when you have to make sacrifices, you also are going to have to go through some grief or some acceptance of what you can control and what you can't. So kind of like you were talking about with time management and some of your other discussions before of like, what are immovable pieces, right? Like I would approach it similarly for like, what are non-negotiables for your family and your family values? There might come a time where the financial needs of a family are going to come before the educational needs because parent has to go to work. And if your kiddo only has this many hours of capacity to do things and you want to prioritize something that's not their classwork, maybe that's a choice that you're going to make as a family or as the adults in the family. So I would say like, be realistic with yourself. And know that it's okay if not everything gets met. Does that mean like your kid just never goes to school because it's inconvenient? No. But is it okay to give yourself permission to say, you know what, today, it's okay if you get a couple answers incorrect on your math assignment because it's all right for us to move on to the next thing. Sorry, that's a convoluted answer.
No, I think that's so great. No, you're talking about like so many great things, and it just makes me thinking like, okay, well, like, man, I should really sit down with my husband and think like, okay, what are our priorities? Like, not just like, who do I love the most? Like, obviously my husband more than the teacher, like that's a good thing, right? But like, what are our priorities? Like, are we going to say we have to keep like our family safety above like these extracurriculars? Like that's probably what a lot of people have been thinking about, and how that translates into all these other like academic things as well. Like if mommy and daddy have to be on meetings and we can't help you, then like maybe that Zoom meeting is just not going to happen. Which is hard and frustrating that like you even have to make that choice. But maybe thinking, are there other ways to focus on these, and are there other solutions? So I think that kind of leads into another topic of like, when you do have those things and you're like, man, this is frustrating. I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like there's probably one out there. I just can't, my brain is like decision fatigue. I just can't. Like, how could you have a healthy conversation with your teachers or administrators in that?
Yeah. So one of the big parts of the work I do is trying to sort through like our communication skills, right? So when we are dealing with a stressful situation that involves multiple people, the way that we communicate with those people can either increase our stress or decrease our stress, right? And so in order for you as the parent to find solutions that are going to be helpful versus just conversations that are going to antagonize things, the words that you use and the style of your communication with teachers and school staff is going to be really crucial. So I would encourage, if you're struggling, A, please have the courage and the vulnerability to reach out to someone at the school. And B, do so from that place of just like objective open-mindedness. So present the information. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling confused about this particular issue I'm having, whether or not it's how to access the website you're telling me to go to, or whether it's not, or whether it's how to fit in this many hours of instruction when I have work, or whatever the case might be. So it's, I feel XYZ because of XYZ situation, right? I feel frustrated because of how challenging this work is for my child, and I'm not always available to coach them through it. And then just asking a simple, like I said, open-minded, could you suggest some solutions for me? Do you happen to have any ideas? Is there anything that you would suggest? Those kinds of questions, right? And, Rebecca, you very astutely reminded me, our tone is hard to read in emails sometimes. So be careful, reread it to yourself, have your spouse or your significant other read it once if you're not sure. Maybe, write it, wait 5 minutes and go back and read it and make sure that all your emotionally charged, expressions are the way you want them to sound. But your teachers are going to be much more eager to help you if they know you're just looking for help and you're not coming from a place of accusing or blaming or demanding for them to do it differently.
Yeah, it's so full of like good reminders, because like you said, having that text, like whether it's on like a Remind app or an email or whatever program your school is using to communicate, sometimes we'll just jump to those and we're in that moment of frustration. And so just like put it down, like think about it, analyze, like, what am I saying? Have your spouse read it. It's so good. As you have older students too, empowering them to make those communication steps is really good. As like in high school online teachers, at times I loved it when the students like took that ownership and reached out, and I would be so much more like willing to work with them sometimes because they were doing that and not just like their parent. Honestly, as a teacher, it's like, oh, well, they actually care. Even if their mom's sitting there writing the email with them, it's fine. It's a step towards becoming a more mature adult and taking care of those things. So I encourage, as you have older learners, to really give them the power to do those as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, okay. As we're doing this, we're trying to figure out how to just navigate the day to day. What are some ways that we can like gauge that like we're doing a good job? Like, how can you kind of create like a measuring stick for success for your family? Because that will look differently for everyone.
Right. So like we already talked about, your family is going to need to figure out its priorities, its non-negotiables, what needs to happen for you guys. The best way to figure out if you're being successful, whatever that means for your family, is to have specific goals, right? If I set a specific goal, then at the end of the day, I can check and see if I met that goal. Now, the best way to meet that goal and to know for sure if you did or not is to have that goal be super specific. So I know a lot of people have been exposed to the concept of a SMART goal. So this is a goal that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So what is my goal exactly? My goal is for you to read 3 chapters in your book. Okay, great. So that's really specific. You're going to read your book. Measurable. Okay, 3 chapters, right? We put a number in there somewhere so we know it's read your book, but it's read 3 chapters of that book. Achievable. Before we set that goal, is that realistic? Is it even possible that your kid's going to read 3 chapters in a day? I don't know. Every kid is different. I don't know what kind of book we're reading, but you can figure that out. Relevant. Is this an assignment that's due soon? Is this a topic that, or a subject that can be postponed? Just figure out if it's relevant for the day. And then time bound, like, okay, by what time does this need to get done? And then I would say you've set off your day with like, hey, here's something specific that we're all working on. And maybe if you are in the middle of a work call, you can kind of point your older kiddos back to that list and say, check your chart. What's on the list for today? And they have a very specific reminder in front of them of what needs to be done. I think that's a simple, tangible way to try.
I love that. And I think it's something you could do with a variety of ages, right? It's going to be a little more detailed probably for the older kids, but just to have the SMART goals, and that kind of works with our time blocking too, and kind of putting that together. So say like my thing I really want my kiddo to do is, like you said, read 3 chapters or something. And I'm thinking, okay, here's a great time. You can have an hour to read, like, let's do it all. But she's like, no, I just want to read like 2 pages here, and I'm going to read some more later. Like, to me, that seems illogical because I would like forget what's happening. You're in the rhythm. That's just our personalities might be different. Is that okay? Like,
yeah. I'm sure every parent has heard the phrase pick your battles. That is not novel, right? I want families during this more stressful time to feel aligned with each other as much as possible. So figure out what it is that's most important to you and avoid fighting over the details. Okay. So if it's important to everybody that your student completes their schoolwork because it makes your kid feel proud of themselves, because it makes you feel proud of yourself and your kid, if that's the goal, if they have a different route to get there, but the goal's getting met, let's just be proud that the goal's getting met. And I know that's easier said than done because we, like you said, we have this logical explanation for why you're going to comprehend more and it's going to get it done faster with the momentum, and you're doing it my way works, right? Just because your way isn't their way doesn't mean their way doesn't work. You could take multiple routes to the same destination, right? So let's focus on getting to our destination, being happy with each other that we've all reached our common destination, and trying to let go of some of the choices in how we get there.
Right. Yes. And I'm just thinking of all these like potential conflicts, right? Whether it's like how you do your math, like that's a very big thing that people are feeling about. Like, you got it done. It wasn't the way I thought, but you did it. It's great. Cool. Whether it's how to turn in your essay, right? Like, old school parent, might want to be like, well, let me pull up like, Microsoft Word, and they'll type up in the document and download it on my floppy disk. No, like maybe not that extreme, but like kids actually have a lot of cool ideas and tools that we are not like trained on. Like, they know how to use Google Docs really well. They might have cool apps. They might like do a lot of their schoolwork on their phone, which is like mind blowing and like, how is that even fun, or can you see it? But like, we need to just say like, did you get it done? Am I verifying with the teacher that this stuff is actually fine to our standard, whatever that is, right. And just roll with it. So I just think there's so many things we could talk about. And if you guys have other questions, Lauren is in the community of Southern California and has services available online now too, I suppose, right? In California.
I'm meeting with people in person when it's safe, and online when that's more comfortable. My practice is called Brighter Future Psychological Services. So either my name or the practice are easily Googleable if I can be of more help to anybody.
Great. Dr. Lauren Franks with Brighter Futures Psychological Services, right? Did I say that right? Okay.
Got it.
Well, thank you so much for your wisdom today. It's always great working with you, and being friends and having our kiddos try to do life together is always fun as well. So thank you so much, and we'll talk more in the future, I'm sure, as well.
Thanks, Rebecca.
And we're back. Oh my goodness gracious. You guys are amazing. I could listen to you both share your wisdom all day long, and you have kids that are younger than me and are both younger than me as people, but you have so much extraordinary life experience, and your hearts for helping other people is so evident in what you shared today and how you guys are raising your family and helping families succeed in this season. So if you could break it down for us as we're getting ready to say goodbye into just a couple simple reminders, what would those be, Miss Rebecca?
Yeah, thanks again. And thank you for all the support you had through all this, listening and with open mind. So just to remind yourself that this can be a stressful time. Like, let's just acknowledge that it probably will be. But we want to have those tools to help us move out of that into a healthy space, right? Because we know this might not be great, but we can get to a better place and really make that a priority. And that you realize that your attitude is a choice, and that's going to be you having to pick a good one. And then that will kind of ripple out throughout your whole family. And also just to be intentional about things. This is a new norm now. It's not just going to be necessarily a short-term solution of patchworking things together and making it work, but like lean into what do we really need to do. Maybe making some harder choices, navigating things a little differently, maybe changing some things in your life and how you do those things together. But know that this is for good, and let's make this a happy solution for a longer term.
I love that. Oh my goodness. So good. I'm going to have to go back and watch it again because there's just so much good. And we just wanted to, as we close this out, we wanted to remind you that there is a church that is here praying for you and cheering for you. And whether or not you join us on Sundays or online or whatever it may be, we would love to be able to support you in any way. If there is a way we can be praying for you, if there's some insight that we can provide separate from what you heard through this series, please let us know. You can email us anytime, kids@reallife.la. That's kids@reallife.la. But thank you again so much, Rebecca. We are so thankful for you sharing this time and this wisdom with us. We are cheering for you and your family this fall. This season of feeling alone and like things are happening to us can actually be a season of hope. We can be praying through it together, and we can remember that we are not ever alone because God is with us and for us. So thank you so much, Miss Rebecca, and thank you to Dr. Lauren Franks, and we will see you soon.